everyone has gotten a chance to come back. Um, I want to introduce myself. Hi, everyone. My name is Citlali. I am the People Projects and Leadership Program Manager here at the Digital Nest. And I want to welcome our panel moderator, Antonia Franco, our President and Chief Operating Officer of the Digital Nest. So if y'all want to drop some clap emojis into the chat, go ahead and do that. Her career has spanned over 20 years of executive and management experience in the nonprofit, philanthropic, and government sectors, advising, advancing access, equity, and being a voice for underserved communities. She has worked extensively on creating strategic partnerships and community building, leading organizational change, and scaling the work of programs, initiatives, and organizations. At the Nest, Antonia is responsible for setting up the operational functions to scale the organization to 5 communities in the Monterey Bay and San Joaquin Valley regions. All right, the stage is yours, Antonia.
Hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. It's good to see you all here. Thank you so much for being with us for this particular panel on the main stage. We're really delighted to have 2 incredible professionals that are really excited to share their journey with us today. So without further ado, I'll do some introductions here. I'd like to welcome Patricia Vasquez Topete. She is the Vice President of Customer Relations at Citibank. She leads the Community Relations team at Citi, where she builds authentic relationships with key stakeholders to expand equitable opportunities for all. Welcome, Patricia.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here today.
Awesome. And there she is. Hello. And also with us, we have Sam Smith. He's the Vice President of Customer Success at Paystand. He's a seasoned technology executive with over 15 years of experience in solving complex business problems, building high-performance teams, and scaling organizations. As the VP of Customer Success at Paystand, he works with his team to delight customers and help them realize the value in their investment. Help me welcome Sam Smith.
Hello.
Hello, hello. How are you, Sam?
Doing well. How are you?
Good, good. Well, thank you both so much for being with us today on day 2 as we kick off day 2. We have one more day to go tomorrow. But we really wanted to spend some time with you both to learn more about your career journey. So I have a set of questions I'm going to get us started with. And first of all, I'll ask Patricia if you can start us off. How would you describe the work that you currently do at Citi?
Thank you so much for your question, Antonia. So the work that I get to do at Citibank, and I want to make sure to share, because working at a bank sometimes, people might think that it's all about finance, having a finance degree. So I actually have a political science degree, and I come from an outreach background. So I actually get to work with a lot of our nonprofit organizations, as the bank really provides financial education workshops to communities. I get to work with a lot of small business owners across the Central Valley. So I actually help manage 11 counties from Bakersfield in the Central Valley to Sacramento. So I always like to demystify demystify when individuals think that you have to have a degree in finance, an MBA, because my story is I actually come from outreach and marketing and working with nonprofits. And I say my work, it's really developing relationships. That's what I focus on day in and day out.
Thank you so much for that. I think that's always so helpful to demystify, right, in terms of what types of degrees are taken in different roles. So appreciate that. Sam, what about you? How would you describe your work at Paystand?
It's funny. I'd say in a nutshell, it's getting problems and solving problems. So, in the type of role that I'm in, or in a customer success role, naturally your customers day in and day out. But more importantly, in customer centric organization, customer success kind of sits at the center of the company. So we represent the customer, right? And there are things that we're sharing with the sales team, the product teams, the engineering team. And in turn, we present all of those groups as the face of the company to the customer. So in that kind of way, we're like an ambassador for the company to the customer, but we're also the customer's advocate within the company.
Yeah, that's so interesting to have that dual role, right? To really make it a win-win for everyone in that sense. So you told us a little bit about what you do, on the daily. What do you do for fun? Can you let in on like what are some hobbies you might have given your very busy schedules, and how do you make time for fun? Patricia, you want to start us off?
I was really excited. I was already smiling. And actually, I wonder if some of the students that are here or attendees might relate to this. I'm actually a poet. So I work in the banking industry. I used to work in government before, but I say this because I'm a poet, and I actually have performed slam poems when I worked for the office of the governor before, something that's not very heard of a lot. I do that it's one of my passions, but it's actually allowed me to connect through my work, through panels that I've done. Sometimes I presented poems. So I've actually married my passion personally with some professional endeavors. So it's kind of funny for me to share that because it's been happening a lot more.
It's always beautiful to be able to pair your passion, right, with the work that you do in the community. What about you, Sam? What is it that you love to do in your spare time?
Sure. Well, one, Patricia, it's slam poetry. That's not something you hear a lot about very often. So I've watched quite a few sessions on YouTube every now and again, and for anyone in the audience who hasn't seen slam poetry before, it's very, very cool. So so on my side, when I'm not working, I try to keep up. So I write science fiction. In another life, I've written and produced for television. Um, Film takes a lot of work and a lot of money, so I started getting, paring down some of the cost and the time. So I'm working on my first novel and a second issue of a comic book that I've self-published. And in between those things, I try to make time for video games and my cat when possible.
That's so incredible. I just really appreciate having two creatives, one that's working in fintech and one that's working in a bank. So I just appreciate that marrying those two identities that you bring to the fore. So that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that and giving a little insight about, a little bit about yourself. Let's delve in a little bit more in terms of your career. I think one of the things that's really interesting that we're seeing from our presenters is to share a little bit about their backgrounds. Like what is it about your background? Can you share like where you came from and how has that influenced, your professional journey? Patricia?
So where I came from and how it has influenced my professional journey. I just want to make sure I cover the whole question. So I would say I actually see my work at a bank still being very focused in outreach and community engagement. And I say that because I'm an immigrant. I moved to the US when I was 12 from Tamaulipas, Mexico, and I like to share this story of growing up. I actually helped my aunt. We came from a very low income community. We sold lottery numbers to our neighbors. So I always say my skill sets, my drive for serving community, my, growing up speaking Spanish, talking to neighbors, and really getting, selling lottery numbers, building community, sitting down for coffee, getting to know them and their stories, being 12 years old, being 11 years old. I say that that's where I learned how to do my job in government, when I was in government, and my job now in banking. I actually also, I think it's very appropriate that I shared. I also worked picking strawberries in Salinas. Sometimes I would get sent to Watsonville. So I grew up picking strawberries in the Central Coast while I was a student in college, because I'm a documented student. And before, when I was in college, I actually could not have, like a regular office job due to our immigration policies. So I would work with farm workers. That's where I also learned how to work with community, how to work with parents, how to work with families, how to engage them. So when I worked for the state of California, I worked in a lot of community. I worked in the Census 2020, so reaching, millions of people in California, developing messaging in Spanish. So I say, working with farm workers in the Central Coast, day in and day out, it's really what has taught me to really help develop messages that are trusted within our communities, and where we put the stories of our communities first, in front of our work.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Patricia. How about you, Sam?
So I came to the States with my mother. I think I was around 3 years old, and my family. My mother is originally from Honduras, and we ended up in a very, very small town in Louisiana, and the South, very, very different than the rest of the country. For you guys who haven't spent time there, it has its charms, but it also has its challenges. So growing up, I grew up with a lot of, I grew up around farms and horses and a lot of, and then I also grew up without the internet. So I think we might be the last generation, right, who will remember a world before the internet and after the internet. So it was, the small town life, I think, forced us a lot to use our imagination, to like communicate, to come up with ideas, so a lot a lot of that in there. We talked a lot of trash and kind of learned to communicate that way. I didn't think would help as much as it did as I got older. But growing up in a Hispanic community, or in a Hispanic home, but not in a Hispanic community, a lot of those values were instilled in us, around work, having immigrant parents. There was just a very, very big focus on work ethic, right, and staying committed. So, and I feel like a lot of that definitely helped carry me, and I'm appreciative for that upbringing today. Through high school and all through college, I waited tables, and also that type of work. I think, just staying on your feet, needing to communicate, needing to match time, and going to night school so that you can kind of pay your way. All of those things definitely helped build a lot of character and experience. I feel like by the time I got into the world, it was like, wow, this was a lot scarier in my head. Like, between my childhood and the other jobs that I had, during college and before college, it's like this isn't actually that bad.
I do. I appreciate you both sharing like your backgrounds. I mean, I think those your backgrounds and experiences, as you have said, really shaped how you do what you do, right, as a professional, and how you show up. As you look at your journey, have there been any like defining professional experiences that have prepared you for this role? I mean, I think you kind of share like how your backgrounds have influenced that, right? But are there any other like major like milestones or experiences that really stand out to you that you'd like to share with our membership today, with our audience? Patricia?
Yeah, I think to further develop what I said earlier, selling lottery numbers with my aunt You know, I really saw at home firsthand what a small business owner like my aunt with a sixth grade education, you know, how much she could provide for myself, for my siblings, for my other aunts and my uncles. I really saw economic development without knowing what economic development was in Mexico. Seeing her, like what that did for our family, right, for our education, for how far we could go with her small business, um, really allowed me to see when this position became open at Citibank. I thought, I want to support women that have small businesses. I want to support them to file their, you know, their business, their LLC. I want them to be able to grow and expand, because I really do believe that when one woman's business grows, they are supporting families, they are supporting the next generation. And I think it really creates that generational wealth, that generational leap within our families, right? They could purchase homes. They can really send their kids to school, right? Like they can provide what's needed, right? What's needed in the household. And so I really did want to become a part of how do I directly impact women like my aunt to be successful. And I really saw an entry point within Citibank, which is why I applied to the role I now have.
Yeah, and research shows, right, that women are the backbone of this workforce, of our workforce. And so your ability to take your own personal experience, bring it to a role and infuse it back into the community is really powerful, Patricia. Sam, how about you? Any defining experiences you'd like to share?
Yeah, so I think for me early on, my background formally, my education is in marketing, and I never would have thought I would have ended up in the types of roles that I ended up in. And there's a joke I've always where they say, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. So and that's definitely how I reflect back on at the begin with to where I ended up. And I think something that hit me very early, kind of carried me, is just understanding how important it is to communicate. Like I feel like my much more limited when I just kind of put my head down, did my own thing in my own world, kind of growing up with that if you do excellent work and you work extra hard, you're going to get ahead. And that's fundamentally true. But if you cannot find that way to express yourself, right, and to make yourself notice, to find those ways not just to communicate but to connect with people. And storytelling is a very, very powerful. And each and every one of you, like all of us, have incredible stories no matter what our backgrounds are. So where are those opportunities to share your story, whether that's a work story, whether that's a personal story, and how do you celebrate other people's stories, right, within the workplace? And I think that probably took me in a very, very different direction, like the understanding that communication, everything is about sharing stories, and that moved me from taking very, very introverted roles, moving in a more like physically present, like visibly present space.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate you sharing about the career. You're saying that it's varied, right? But I think you've been saying yes and welcoming the opportunities that are presented to you, right? Because it is not a straight and narrow path. It really never is. But if you're receptive to the opportunities, they definitely come to you, right? The other thing I just wanted to say is that I feel like this present moment in time where we are in the workforce, I think people are more welcoming of hearing people's stories more than ever, right? And in my years of experience, there have been times where, like, do you feel comfortable saying you're a Latina? Are you comfortable about talking about your humble beginnings? But I think now it's like there's a deeper appreciation and receptivity to be able to share that and communicate that differently. So you don't have to check your culture at the door. You don't have to check your identities at the door, that you actually can bring them. And that's what that's your whole self. And you have so much more to give to an organization and so much value. So let's talk a little bit about what have you had any like major obstacles or setbacks? Like how do you can you share an experience of what you had, what setback that was, and how did you overcome it? And I think our audience could definitely benefit from learning about some challenges. Patricia?
I think for me, I'm going to share about my experience working for the census. I would say that when I worked for the census, we had a lot of players, stakeholders that were involved in the process. I manage a very large, over $5 million budget for our coastal counties. So as you could probably imagine, right, when you have 100 stakeholders, different counties, different cities, I was being pulled very many different ways, right? And I didn't have, I would say, not enough for what everybody wanted, right? What everybody was requesting. So I think for me, I really had to be very agile on my feet. Being very prepared. I always say, no matter what job you have, right? Whether you're mid career, top executive, starting off, right? Preparation is extremely important, and that's how I always showed up, working for the census and not working for Citibank. And also always know that you don't have to have the answer. I was actually leading a lot of webinars, so what I'm doing today, but with a lot of government stakeholders. So when somebody had a question that I had not been prepped for, I didn't have talking points for, or I did not have 100% accuracy of what I would say, I was trained to say, let me get back to you, right? So never be afraid to say, let me jot that down, let me get back to you. So being very willing and open to say, I don't have the answer, but I'm going to follow up with you. So I think that's what I've learned throughout my career, and it has really also helped me to be able to follow through with very accurate information, specifically when we're talking about a very large campaign, very visible. So I would say that's a takeaway for me. And then one last point that I'll make is, at the end of the day, right? I was dealing with a lot of personalities. I actually had some calls that were very, there was a lot of emotions, right? We were talking about very large budgets, people that were driven, and community advocates, right? They love the community. I know that they needed resources, but for me, it was always building that relationship and taking the time to, let's get on a phone call for 30 minutes, right? I don't mind sitting down and having a conversation, and let me share with you where our plans are. Let me show up and support you in another way if perhaps I don't have the financial resources to provide to you. So for me, it was always, our conversation doesn't end with money. I can help and support you in another way. I have marketing tools. I have, I have resources. I have materials. So I really ask partners and stakeholders, how can I still support you? And that relationship until today, right? I'm still connected with them because I was always willing to show up, not just to say, I can't help you. I always found a way to go above and beyond. And I think that's what's taken me really far into my new career, developing the relationship first and foremost.
I like how you were able to take that challenge and turn it into a positive, and not only a positive, but like a sustaining relationship, right? And partnerships over time. Yeah, that's super valuable. Sam, how about you?
Yeah, so feels like a lifetime ago now, but for a number of years, a full stack marketing agency that I owned. It was also, we did a lot of creative work, but customers would create a logo for them, and we would end up making their websites, writing all of their copy, creating their collateral. There was even a client where we helping them get their patents, helping them do all of their testing and manage manufacturing in China and brought their products to market. So we were doing what I would consider to be crazy things. I remember, I had a few employees, and I would come out and say, "Hey guys, we won some new business," and a consultant, that next job is always, that next gig is always what you're looking for. And I remember, everyone would be like, "Yeah, what are we doing?" And I would explain it, and they're like, "We don't know how to do that." We have absolutely no clue how to do that. And it's like, well, we've already got our first deposit, so we better figure it out. And we ended up building a very successful practice over maybe around 6 or 7 years. And there were a couple of projects that we had that went really south. There were external factors. I think with the financial crisis forever ago, there were just some things that happened where I ended up having to sell off parts to meet my obligation to a couple of clients. And by the time we'd finished the work, actually it was just left. So a lot of the other people either bought out other contracts and moved on, but we were at a point where like left. And when I finished those projects, it was over. The company didn't exist anymore. And that's a very, very hard place to land. And at that point, it was like, can I rebuild? Do I even have it in me to rebuild? Like, I had to question, who am I without this? Right. And at that point, I decided to kind of go back into the corporate. And I just reached out to every company that I admired and said, I don't even need pay. Just, like I'll whatever, but just let me on and let me show you what I can do and give me the opportunity to be part of what you're doing. And I think I 31st or my 32nd offer out there before somebody picked it up. And it was, just one out of no, ghosting, no's. And somebody, picked me up, and I ended up, joining a small startup and getting an opportunity to grow with them. And that's kind of how I ended up in tech. But it would have been a very time to just kind of pack up, leave California and just go settle into another life. So I think for people to recognize that the skills that you build through the experiences that you have go with you. Everything else fades away. No one can take that from you. And there's always an opportunity to leverage those skills to put yourself in a new and more exciting position in the future.
And Sam, as what you're saying, like every experience, tough or amazing, builds upon the other, right? Like you bring that with you. And so you just start collecting all this amazing experiences and wisdom, if you will, right? To help with your next roles. I think also what I heard is like the themes for you were like believing in yourself, right? Taking the initiative. It takes a lot of courage to just cold call and communicate to a number of agencies or companies, right? And so just staying true to who you are and still following through and doing things and not being afraid to try something different.
Absolutely. And there's actually one other thing I'd like to add there. I've heard a lot of people say, oh, once you hit rock bottom, you can only go up. That's not true. You can also go sideways. You can go sideways for a very, very long time. So I think it's very important for young people to recognize that, that you need to initiate that spark to kind of get yourself back up on your feet, whether you feel like it or not. And just say, okay, like whatever's happened has happened. And where I go from here is like up to me, because it's very, very easy to just kind of get stuck and end up just moving sideways instead of getting kind of back on your feet and building that trajectory.
Yeah, absolutely. Final question before we open it up to our audience here. What advice would you give students who are interested in pursuing a leadership role, right? So it's taken everyone, I'm sure, years and time to get to this place, but like what advice would you give our audience participants? Oh, Patricia, please.
I'll go ahead and share, but first I wanted to follow up on what I heard Sam say. I just finished a leadership training in LA, and there was a quote that I kept hearing, which is, "If it's to be, it's up to me." So I'm going to quote that somewhere in my office. So the quote is, "If it's to be, it's up to me." Really, I think if you want to create something, if you want to meet a goal, it's really going to come down to you, right? Down to the action that you take to really obtain that. And your question was, what kind of advice to give to the audience in regards to leadership, correct?
Yeah, like how to get to and prepare for a leadership role. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would say one piece of advice, two pieces of advice. I'll start with one that really helped me to embark in my new role at Citibank. So one thing is really do what calls you. So the industry, the initiative, the project that really connects to you. So if you're passionate about writing, right, making sure that you're doing writing, that you're going to conferences. I myself go to a lot of conferences. I work with a lot of immigrant English language learners, and I put my name in the hat to be a speaker, to be a facilitator, to be a keynote. So that has really helped me to be visible in my industry. And it's aside from my job. I do this on a personal level. So that's one suggestion. I also am a part of a lot of local organizations. Working with your community, there is a lot that you can learn, especially if you need to have some experience before you apply to a job. Um, I'll say another thing that I did when I was in college is internships, and fellowships. Right after college, I actually had a job secured already before graduating, because I had done 2 internships in my field of policy, and that really allowed me to be one of the top applicants. So it's so important that you find fellowships. Some of them are paid, so that's really helpful as well. You get experience, you get paid while getting really high level experience. And then my last piece of advice, as I talk about conferences, is share with us what you're doing. I'm a huge LinkedIn advocate. I'm always on LinkedIn. After I'm here, I'll probably share about my participation. I used to be one person that always kept her head down. I think I could relate to Sam on some of the things that he mentioned. And really, I was more introverted, working extremely hard, and I wasn't being noticed for higher level positions. So I say to everyone, when you go to a conference, when you create a new initiative, when you're a part of a big project, make sure that you're sharing it. Make sure that if there's a way to capture an image, there's a way to post a document, there's a way to highlight your leadership in that you're sharing it in a visible platform. So if anybody wants to connect with me after today as well, I would love to talk more about some of the steps that I've taken, which I think has opened up opportunities for me, even in local communities. I'm a part of different boards just because of the work that people have seen I'm doing, and they check out my LinkedIn post.
And I really appreciate you, Patricia, extending yourself to the students, right, that are with us today and helping to make that connection and being there for them. Yeah, I think, thank you so much for the valuable advice. Sam, what advice do you have?
I would say really think about your personal brand. Okay, like consider your image. I feel like there's a lot of people who are very dynamic, right, internally, but people don't actually get to see that, right? And I've seen people say in a one-on-one setting, they have so much energy, right? They're so beautiful, they're so incredible. And when they go out into the world, you start doing this. So people, the way that you look and the way that you carry yourself is the first thing that people notice about you, right? And from there, right, it's how do you communicate, right? It's how do you interact. And I can tell you, early in my career, I dressed like a bum most of the time. Just your normal kind of tech startup, whatever. And I started realizing that people aren't seeing me for what I can offer because I don't look like the thing that they think would be able to offer that. So even like this kind of stuff, the way that I dress today, it's like what people think a tech executive looks like, at least if they're not in the Bay Area. So there's a lot of little tricks, right, that you can do to sell yourself, right, without having to sell yourself. And if you carry yourself in a particular fashion, people are going to assume that that is who you are, which is going to open more doors. And also, don't be afraid to take risks. Don't be afraid to say yes, right? You have to think that there are many companies who will pay you to learn, right? And what I mean by that is you could do something that could be absolutely horrifying, right? That you don't think you're capable of doing, but take it on, give it a try, put everything you've got into it. And that's how you grow. But yeah, the personal brand part, I think, is very, very important. Think about how you want to be perceived in the world and find those opportunities to express that, right? And I think that you'll find many more ways that you'll be embraced without necessarily having to try as hard.
Thank you both. I think that's a really strong theme to end our portion before we open it up, is to say, like, making sure that you work really hard, but share it with the world, right? And present yourself as such for the world to see all that you have to offer. There was one other thing I was going to add to that. I think, one thing that I just wanted to add, just to circle back, we talked a little bit about this, is that also what I would share with our students is that you don't have to qualify for every single item on a job opportunity, right? Or if someone, like you said, someone shares an opportunity with you and you're like, I can't do that, that's so scary, right? So don't, go for it. The worst I can say is no, but at least you tried. But I know folks have a tendency to, like, I don't meet every criteria here, so I'm not going to apply for it, and I sell myself short, right? So ensuring that folks show who they are, and also, go for it and don't be afraid. Have that courage. Okay, we have a question here from a participant. Azucena asked earlier, is that what are some mental health tips? Oh, I think hold on just again. Sorry. It moved on me. What are some mental health tips that you have about dealing with, like, just the stress in your day-to-day work?
Go ahead, Sam.
No, go, Patricia, please.
I was just going to highlight an amazing organization, and there's probably more like this. I am actually a part of an organization called Immigrants Rising. They actually have groups where they focus on different issues affecting mental health, and actually you could also have access to a therapist depending on availability and capacity of the organization. It's an amazing organization. They really work with you, and so they focus on different things too. Like there's even a group for entrepreneurs, right? First generation, for young professionals. There's a lot of groups where they provide you a support group. So I've been a part of them for like the last 2 to 3 years. They have super helpful tips and resources. Somebody dropped it on the chat, so that's amazing. I've been working with them. I receive support with them. I support them. So that is one of them. And just also, another great organization is the Latino Community Foundation. If you're into the arts, they have resources for getting started in the arts, in the creative space. That's another way that I would say I deal with stress. The writing, the performing helps me to really use another side of my skills, and to really bring that out, and it helps me to deal with my stress.
So your passion and your hobby also helps you to de-stress from your day-to-day work. Yeah, amazing. Sam?
Absolutely. So for me personally, it's been, this is very near and dear to my heart, because I've struggled with mental for most of my life. I continue to. So I have bipolar disorder. I also fight depression, and I have a tiny little smidge of social anxiety. So, and I think the important thing there's So one is, how do you manage those types of things? And for me, it's about being very, very disciplined, right? So I have a structure and a process that I follow. And if I only worked when I felt like it, when I felt up to it, I would never work. So it's, despite how I'm feeling, I recognize that this is part of the condition. And step one is to get out of to do this thing, right? And as you go through the motions, you start building momentum, right? Through the day, months, through the years. That helps carry you out of it and stops you from getting stuck in those positions. But and I can tell you from experience that don't shortchange sleep. Sleep is possibly the most important thing that you have to manage if you're dealing with stress, with anxiety, with mental illness. Sleep before, then diet, then exercise, right? And getting it, but sleep first. And I think sleep is the first thing that people lose, kind of tail spinning. So if you can protect your sleep, it's really going to help you maintain a lot of those other areas in your.
Thanks for sharing that, Sam. And I do appreciate how you talk about like discipline really carries in all aspects of your life, right? You just shared how you use discipline to support the needs that you have personally, but then discipline helps in your work. Discipline, right? It's like it carries you through, and it's pretty universal in that respect. Thanks so much for sharing that. For folks, anyone interested in sharing a question, please feel free to add that in the chat, and happy to ask the question. We do have one question here, is that, what's your most favorite thing about working at your company? Oh, Sam, you want to start us off? Sorry.
Oh, sure. I'd say that it's the same. It's probably the same for every company that I've and why I feel that being in leadership roles, at least for me, are so important. And it's that every startup you talk to, they're going to be talking about changing the world one bit at a time, or one something at a time, and transforming the planet. All those things are fantastic. But at the end of the day, what I think is incredible about business and tech is that it makes the pie bigger. And when companies creates more opportunities for you, but it also generates opportunities for others. So in my line of work and as a tech, I've helped so many young people get to better places and gain skills just by doing my job well, just by helping companies succeed, right? So each and every one of us are playing a part as we help make this pie bigger to create more opportunities for, right, to help other people learn and grow their families and educate themselves. So I think it's very important. It's very powerful to understand that it's not zero sum, right? And we all contribute to making the pie big, opportunities, not just for ourselves, but for others.
Thank you, Sam. Patricia?
Mine, I will have to say that there's two components to my answer. So I've actually been working with farm worker women that are launching their businesses from Madera County and Fresno County. And so when I have been invited to a couple of events, one part that I've enjoyed, I'm talking about a specific event, but I've done this quite a few times in other spaces, is I actually saw them speaking in panels in Spanish and sharing their immigration story, and then their mole business. So going from making mole at home to packaging the mole and having their mole at a store. So to me, listening to their stories of motherhood, crossing the border, supporting their children, launching their business, it's what I love to do. And then being offered to have mole in community with them at the event, I cannot tell you how it feels to be in the space and just to be invited to, come have homemade tortillas. We have mole for you. And then just having one-on-ones with them and supporting them and providing the resources that sometimes they need on behalf of the bank. It's really what I enjoy about my job, to see those success stories and to see them going from growth to expansion.
How beautiful. What a way to end our session today. I want to thank you, Patricia and Sam, for being with us, for not only being incredible professionals, but incredible human beings, really making a difference in our communities. So thank you so much, and we'll pass it over to Amber.